Caledonian Road is a charming little tube station. It's one of a rare few to have an old roundel tucked away at the front of the platform. It's a classic Leslie Green station with the oxblood red exterior, which means that on the platforms it has its distinct coloured tiles and name tiles as well. And by the lifts there's even reference in the tiles to our first destination today on my walk. So welcome to another London walk where I want to go and see some of the Christmas lights around central London, but of course they're best going to be seen at night time. So for the morning I thought I'd do a bit of an explore around North London and essentially track the Piccadilly Line into Zone 1, starting with Caledonian Park, which features a magnificent clock tower. This would have stood in the centre of a metropolitan cattle market from 1855. Essentially the reason why this was here was because it was becoming a little bit too congested to deliver cattle to Smithfield Market in the city. Prior to that there would have been a Copenhagen manor house here. There would have been Copenhagen Fields, which is why you still get references to that around here to this day. It's a magnificent little gem of London. Last time I was here it was actually snowy, which was a pretty scene. To add extra reference to the cattle market, there is a Market Road Gardens here. I've overlooked this, never actually come to peek my head inside before. Moving on over into Paradise Park, the chicken's already given it away. There's a little city farm here, which I think is quite fitting because Hertfordshire Zoo, up until only a few years ago, was known as Paradise Park. Just realised there's a little train wagon there, and I had no idea that the origins of Battersea Dogs Home can be traced back to here either. That's pretty cool. Oh, they've got little guinea pigs here as well. Passing on over to Highbury Fields, which is the largest park in Islington. It might not look it at this stage, but it's here where you can see the former entrance into the Highbury and Islington Underground station. I've not actually seen the entrance around the back before. Here's the main entrance that backs out onto Holloway Road that sports the original station name, and Islington came later, and the year it opened in 1904. When the Victoria Line came through in 1968, they installed escalators. So because they're at an angle, the lifts leading up to this station entrance were no longer used, and so you now enter on the other side of the road as part of the overground station, which saw this new building open up, which replaced a really fancy old Victorian entrance. This one is just not the same. Highbury's a major transportation junction with the railways and the roads, and of course there's Highbury Corner here, which, like Archway in recent years, part of it has been pedestrianised, so it's no longer a massive one-way square. Canonbury is nearby to Highbury, and you'll find here the Canonbury Tower, a remnant of a former manor house. This is, I believe, the oldest building in Islington nowadays. That dates from around 1509. Canonbury Square next door was home to George Orwell for a time. I've seen a couple of his houses. Came across a beautiful old cottage of his up in Hertfordshire along the Icknield Way. I'm basically looping back around to Highbury Corner now, passing through Compton Terrace Gardens, which only really exists so that the houses can be tucked quite back from the busy road. You'll find maps around Highbury which are strangely out of date. I mean, it's showing the roundabout at Highbury Corner, but also that the new Emirates Stadium from 2006 has not yet replaced the Highbury one. I've not quite done a complete circuit back to Highbury Corner. I've headed left to pass through Laycock Green, which used to be the site of a dairy. Moving over into Barnsbury, there's another delightful square here like Canonbury, And I feel like I should point out, considering we started at Caledonian Road station, that there is a Caledonian Road and Barnsbury station on the London Overground, which is the longest station name in London. It beats even Cutty Sark for Maritime Greenwich and London St Pancras International. But I've always found it odd that it's kept that name, because a lot of stations back in the day did have very convoluted names like that after many places and roads in the area. Why it hasn't yet been simplified to just Barnsbury, I'm not too sure. I've come across Barnsbury Wood in the area, which I've seen classed as London's smallest nature reserve, and it's barely ever open. Only on Tuesdays between 2 and 4 p.m. So that's probably the best shot I'm going to get of it. Well, I finally managed to find the Piccadilly Line again, in the form of a disused station. This is York Road, which the exterior instantly reminds you of Caledonian Road, where we began. This station closed quite early in 1932, when the Piccadilly Line extended on both ends of the route, essentially to kind of speed up journeys because not many people were using this, which is kind of ironic because there's now a huge new development around here just to the north of King's Cross, so there have been calls to reopen this station. You can spot what looks to be some benches in there as well, which has come from an overground station, where again, funnily enough, just down the road lies the overground and another disused station called Maiden Lane, so this area can really do with the station. But if they were to reopen the station, they might have to change the name, as well, it's not actually York Road anymore, it sits on York Way. I'm a big fan of the redevelopment around King's Cross, specifically Coal Drops Yard here, it's kind of become a market shopping area. The gas holders, quite infamously, they've been turned into apartments. Also a huge Christmas tree here, first kind of indication that this is somewhat a Christmas walk. Of course you have the Regent's Canal here as well, which if you were to follow it wouldn't take too long for you to reach Camden, so you can definitely have a nice day out exploring both King's Cross and Camden markets. One of my favourite little secrets of this area though is if you head alongside Camden Street Natural Park, you'll find remnants of Olympic rings that would have hung up in St Pancras Station during London 2012. They've been turned into benches. They have seen better days though, admittedly. Before I head into St Pancras though, I thought I ought to poke my head into King's Cross real quick, where of course it's very well known for having platform 9 3/4, so I think it's rather fitting that its Christmas tree here is Harry Potter themed. I feel like this was a really obvious theme to have, and yet I can't recall them ever doing it before. There's always a lot of people visiting the shop here and queuing to get a photo with the sign, although ironically platform 9 3/4 is in between 8 and 9, not 9 and 10. Of course, if they ever renumber platform 0, then it will be in the right place. They've got to put a track back at platform 10 first though. Alright, well now I've entered St Pancras, where infamously they have a entirely different Christmas tree every year. This one seems to be kind of like a wind-up Christmas tree, which is pretty cool. St Pancras is known not to fall to the usual stereotype of Christmas trees, and for that I quite like it. I'm sat in the Christmas tree where you can play music. Let's see Christmas music. I did spot it last week when I was here to head to Amsterdam. It's pretty odd to come back here 3 times in 1 week. But I mentioned in that video that I'm not really the typical tourist that goes to museums or queues for hours to get to the very popular cafes to buy expensive goods. But something I did want to get when in Amsterdam was some street waffles, and I've specifically not had any yet, so I feel like what better time than to have it now. Well, here it is. It's quite flat. Let's give it a go. Yeah, it was pretty nice. What more did you expect? I'm not a food review channel. Yeah, it is weird to be back. You know, I've passed by here so many times and not gone on the Eurostar, and now I can say that I have. I like this spot up here. You got the statue of Sir John Betjeman, who essentially saved the station. It had gained grade 1 listing literally 10 days before demolishment was due to begin in the late 60s. I'm glad this station still exists. It is definitely one of my favourites in London. Oh, it's not so cold, it's not so early, but I'm still at St Pancras International. Moving further into Zone 1, I'm passing by Brunswick Square, which I don't think I've really seen before because I've always instead just walked through the Brutalist Brunswick Centre estate area. I'm seeing a lot of posters up in the windows up there that say cold. Apparently this whole estate has had no heating for quite a few weeks, which is pretty nuts, especially in December. There is something I like about these Brutalist estates, but it doesn't have that same kind of charm that Barbican does. The Brunswick leads you quite quickly through to Russell Square station, which is another one that's quite evidently a Leslie Green designed oxblood red exterior station, which I'll admit is definitely one of my favourites on the network. Similarly, I would say that Russell Square itself is one of my favourite green squares in the city. It does have a Christmas tree of its own. If you come into the SOAS gallery around the corner from Russell Square, you can find a tiny little Japanese roof garden that you can visit for free. There really isn't a whole lot to it. I'm wondering if this is resembling a trig point over there, but it is a nice little hangout spot in central London if you don't want, if Russell Square is too busy, for example. I've never been up here before, I've only found out about it recently, so I thought I'd just give it a quick visit. Well, I've descended back down to the street, and on this Russell Square road sign you see one of the most prominent old boroughs. There are a lot of signs about that still mention the borough of Holborn, even though we're in Camden nowadays. Well, if you weren't that impressed by the view on top of the Japanese roof garden, then how about heading over to the Post building, where you can get a fantastic viewpoint of London for free. You do have to go through like a security check, form of ID. I had my bank card, which sufficed. I've never been up here before, but this is great. You can make out Battersea Power Station's chimneys over there. London Eye is quite prominent, but behind it you might be able to just make out the Croydon Transmitter Tower. Of course, there's plenty of buildings in the City of London. You get a great shot of Centre Point if you come over on the other side. You got the BT Tower. I can see beyond that the Wembley Stadium arch in the distance. Probably the best part about coming up here though is seeing the roof of the British Museum. That's pretty cool. So my Russell Square station has a green colour scheme to match that roof. I think those are some of the towers of Barbican in the distance down there. Oh, I can make out the orbital in the Olympic Park as well. Oh, Canary Wharf is actually visible through the city's buildings. I like that. Yeah, this feels like a real hidden gem of London. Come here if you want a viewpoint of the city. What I like about it as well is that because it's called the Post building, presumably there is a former mail rail station underground here. It's very quiet up here as well. You just hear sounds of construction really, because I mean you're going to get that in London anyways, no matter where you are. And it's just one other person on the other side. Much quieter than if you were up in Sky Garden, for example, which is somewhere back there in the city buildings. Now I've descended back down and I'm on the streets of Holborn. I feel like I can't pass by and not at least showcase the Kingsway tram tunnel, where the tram tracks are still there, which is quite impressive after all this time. This would have been a really cool part of London's transport network if it was still in use today, an underground tram stop. It would have helped relieve congestion in Aldwych, and the other tunnel is still used. It is still an underpass for cars today. The 521 bus used to pass through, but now no bus does at all. Continuing along Kingsway, you pass by Holborn Station, which doesn't have the Leslie Green design, or does it? There's a very distinct archway there which is featured on his station buildings, and in fact it would have had the oxblood red. But when the Central Line came through in 1933, and it got amalgamated into the Piccadilly Line station here at Holborn. Escalators replaced lifts here, and British Museum station, which was solely on the Central Line, closed. Kingsway does feel a little treacherous to walk down, so I've come to decide just to pass through Lincoln's Inn Fields instead, which is apparently the largest square in central London. Passing through this way lets me come across the old Curiosity Shop, which I've never seen before. One of Charles Dickens's novels is named that. Seems like it's been restored in recent years though. This kind of whole area's a bit of a new feel to it. Oh, apparently it's the oldest shop in London. I'm sure that could probably be disputed, but if it survived both the Great Fire of London and the Blitz, then fair play to it. This is cool. There's a giant globe here, but it's upside down. The South Pole is at the top, so it's kind of a little confused on how to find us, but there we are. There's Amsterdam. Well, the Kingsway leads down to Aldwych, which circles the Strand, which has been pedestrianised in recent years, so it's a lot nicer to walk through here now. It does mean the traffic can be a bit slower though, and I mean, we've seen it several times on the walk so far. There's another Oxblood Red Leslie Green station, but the difference this time is that this one is disused. It does say Strand on there, but it was renamed to Aldwych to avoid confusion with Charing Cross, which was called Strand. This is probably the most infamous of disused stations on the network. Little tiny Aldwych branch from Holborn, which was planned to go further under the Thames to Waterloo, but just never did. And so because of the low usage, because it was just a tiny branch, it ended up closing in 1994 on the same day that the Ongar branch closed beyond Epping. Oh, I figured this will be a thing. There's usually an ice skating rink here at Somerset House. Thought I'd just poke my head in to have a quick look as I'm passing. Well, I've definitely not just wasted some time by heading into the London Transport Museum and wandering around its shop to let it get dark to see some of the Christmas lights around Covent Garden. Oh, that's neat. They've made it look like a bus stop pole. I don't think I've seen this before. So Covent Garden is nice and Christmassy, and I like when you walk through the old market here and then all of a sudden there's just a really impressive Christmas tree. I mean, look at that. Well, today's festive walk has come to an end at Trafalgar Square, what can be classified as the centre of London. All the mile markers to London, for example, are directing you to here by its iconic Christmas tree, which gets taken the mick out of sometimes because the lights are not as good as, say, Covent Garden's. But I really like the story behind it, a symbol of our friendship with Norway in World War II, and ever since they have delivered a Christmas tree here every year. And it's actually quite impressive when you see it up close, because you can tell it's like a proper tree that's come from a forest. So thank you for joining me on that walk. We'll still get a couple of videos out before Christmas, but they might not be as themed as this one. Plenty of buildings